Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this month's meeting of the Firefighters Book Club. Today, we're hanging out with John Norman. He's going to be covering his book, Working with Giants. This is for those of you on the book club every month. I mean, that's the whole goal, trying to read a book every month. This one was a lot thicker than most of the ones that we've had on the book club. So even myself, I was struggling to kind of get it all done. I was up reading and kind of messing with it last night just to kind of make sure that I had some notes down for today. The book for next month is Jump Seat Leadership by Joshua Chase. It's kind of we kind of threw that one last minute into the mix. It wasn't on the reading list originally. And my July, just based on shifts and everything else, is really busy. So I was having some trouble squeezing a book in for July. And I was supposed to have Joshua Chase probably in December. And the reason for that is it's a firefighter leadership book, leadership from the jump seat. And so what we usually do in December is we actually read like a firefighter level book. And it's actually something that for Christmas, we try to give books to our crews as Christmas presents. So we're doing Christmas in July with Joshua Chase's book, and he'll be on here. And then he'll also be in the meeting following for the writer's block meeting. He's actually helped a couple of people write their books, and I think he's written 4 now. So I'm really excited to have Joshua Chase on here next month. After that, the rest of the schedule for the rest of the year, we have the books laid out on what is going to be the next couple of books. I just don't have the dates scheduled. So you can at least start purchasing the books, getting them on your shelf, getting them ready to go. And hopefully we'll be sending out the dates here soon. All right. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Norman. Welcome, Chief. How are you this morning?
Very well, Jess. Good to see you. How are you?
Good to see you. I saw you out at FDIC last year and asked you to come on the book club. And I know that we keep talking about going out to do firefighters and fire trucks getting ice cream, but logistically that's always been harder. So I said, well, we'll get you on the book club to get you started there. But always good to see you, and welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for taking time out of your day.
Yeah. So obviously, you wrote Fire Officer's Handbook and started with that kind of tactics and some leadership stuff and all that. How did Working with Giants come about as your new book?
Actually, it had probably started about the time I was still doing the tactics book. We're talking 90, 91, 92, and I urge everybody to think about this for their lives. We go through and see so much great stuff, some amazing things, and it's a shame that we don't capture it. My father, I talk about my father a lot. He was a World War II Navy vet, and I am so sad that I didn't capture so many of his stories while he was still alive, and now he's gone. And my grandkids, I would love to be able to tell him or, let them know who he was and what he was part of. So this was born out of that kind of thought that in those days we were doing so much crazy stuff, and we'd come back from, fire or an explosion or what have you. And somebody would always say, geez, that was amazing, man. I wish somebody made a movie about it, or we captured it on film, from the interior. And everybody was saying, movies, forget it. TV shows, not a chance. Nobody would watch it. Nobody would believe that it was true. And most of the time, all they would see is black screen in front of them anyway. So I said, you know what? It's still worthwhile to write down, and I started making notes of a lot of things. Being an officer was one of the big things that helped push it too, because I had to write incident reports on what we did at all these events, including all the names of, all the players and so on. So it was pretty easy. I started just keeping copies of all my fire reports. And after a while, I said, man, this was some amazing stuff. But then after 9/11, it was so many of the people that I was working with and part of were killed that day. So this came out to be like a tribute to all those great people. I was absolutely blessed to work with and for such amazing people who I consider to be, real giants in their field. I mean, it was guys like Ray Downey and Terry Hatton, Dennis Mojica. I mean, firemen all the way up. So that's where the title came from. As I say, I was just in awe of so many of these guys, and to have been able to work with them or for them was just an absolutely astounding, event.
Yeah, well, I kind of set myself back up because as long as I've known you, you've always been a chief officer, and as I'm reading through, we're going back to when you were a firefighter and doing a lot of that stuff, and you kind of start to see, and when you read this book, the things that you did that made you this guy wearing a tie and a helmet on the front cover. It's like it doesn't come overnight. It was, those years of working in the rescue and all those with those guys like Ray Downey and Pete Gansey, and that first picture, like right at the beginning when you're still a captain, young, and you're hanging out with those guys at the command post. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. I had watched Vinny Dunn do a podcast about a month ago, and he used a phrase that says absolutely put it exactly right. He called his career a magic carpet ride. And that's exactly what it was for me. I mean, I had no idea where I would end up, no idea how it happened. It was just, I got on this magic carpet and I just went through an amazing career that, God, I could never have planned it if I wanted to. As a matter of fact, a good friend of mine when I was in college, my best friend in college was a fellow named David Rose, who became a district chief in Mobile, Alabama. He was from as far south in Alabama as you can get. It was right on the Gulf of Mexico. And we just hit it off. But after college now, about 73 or 74, he came up to visit New York City, and we're doing a tourist thing. And there was a book out at that time called 20,000 Alarms by a guy, Dick Hamilton, who had been a lieutenant in Rescue 2. And it was one of those, again, like a Report from Engine 82 kind of book that, man, made you want to be a fireman. And we both had read it, and it was about his career. Dick was a fireman in Rescue 4 and then a lieutenant in Rescue 2. And as we're leaving the city, we're coming back out through Queens, and you come down Queens Boulevard. Rescue 4's Firehouse is right there on the side. He says, man, can you imagine if we were so lucky to be, get paid to be a firefighter, but then if we could ever be lucky enough to get into one of those rescue companies, how spectacular would that be? He says, man, yeah, but it's, there's like 1% of the job makes it. So we stopped into Rescue 4's quarters, and they gave us the nickel tour, and it just said, oh man, this is a goal. But I had no idea how to go about it. In New York, the rescues were typically staffed with very senior people with, a lot of experience. So for me, it was not even an imaginable goal at first, and then later on to see where I was, it was like, wow, how did that happen? It was pretty impressive.
Well, and it happened for you pretty early on. You just impressed the right person at the right time, and there it was.
Well, yeah, Steve Cassani. I mean, the importance of mentors within an organization like the fire department can't be overstated. It's just, Steve was an amazing guy who went on. I mean, he and I were close for 20 years. And, he just kind of took me under his wing and said, okay, I'm going to teach you this, but you have to pass it on to the next guy. Otherwise, I'm going to be very upset with you. And nobody wanted to disappoint Steve. So, yeah, that was another, formational moment in my life, that, okay, a guy like Steve took an interest in me and then carried me further. I mean, when it came for me to become the captain of Rescue 1, Steve was a lieutenant there now. And I asked Steve, I don't know about this, man. And he's like, do you want it? If you want it, go for it, and he was there to, support me through it. So.
Yeah. And by the time it was over, you get to work on a couple different rescues. But let's go back. You talked about your dad and where that all started. In the book, you talk about the first fire you ever went on when you were pretty young.
Yeah, my father, like I say, came out of the Navy in World War II, and especially his first carrier had actually been sunk by a U-boat in the Atlantic. It was the only carrier lost in the Atlantic Ocean. But when they came out, now they put him on another ship and sent him out to the Pacific. And in the interim, the Navy had learned, you better teach people about firefighting. So he had gotten firefighting training in the Navy. He was still a gunner's mate, but he, gotten firefighter training. And when he came out of the Navy in 46, the local fire department was there. The reason he was so interested was his mother had burned to death in a house fire while he was in high school. So he came out and he decided he was going to make the world better, by doing what he was able to do. One of the things he was able to do was be a firefighter. So he joined the Inwood Fire Department where we lived and became a chief there in the early 50s. And then continued on as volunteer, and he stayed with the organization for almost 55 years until his death. He was still driving the first due engine when I was the chief there in 1991 through 93. So he had, tremendous amount of dedication, and he instilled that in all of us. I have 3 brothers and a sister, and he's instilled that sense of service in all of us. So when one night, I say my first fire that I have any memory of, I was probably 5 or 6 years old. I don't even know exactly what date it was. But he was babysitting me, and the fire whistle blows and goes off for it turns out to be a working house fire. And then the mutual aid town, their siren starts sounding. So now he knows this is a big deal. So he just grabbed me, put me under his arm, and now off he goes running to the firehouse, which is about 3 blocks away. And we get there in time. The only rig left in quarters is an old, 500-gallon a minute 1934 pumper. And he throws me up in the jump seat there, and off we go to the fire. And it was I remember, I don't know exactly how big, but it was a massive, massive old wooden house, vacant, because the state was running an interstate highway. Well, it was supposed to be part of the interstate highway system right through the middle of town. So this was vacant, about to be knocked down. But it's going, and the house next door to it's going, and trees all around it are going. And I'm, pulling into this like, oh my God, it's the end of the world, But now he's calm and okay, reports into a chief. Chief says, get down there, take a hydrant down there. And now he's, connecting up to the hydrant. You want help? No, get up there and stay up there. Don't get down out of that seat, So I just got to be a spectator at my first fire at 5 years old, and it was like an indelible impression. And I could still see it to this day. I used to walk to school past that these multiple houses that were burned down. So I remember still afterwards looking at the charred room, the charred trees everywhere. It was a big old building, but so that was like set the hook, just okay, got the hook in, and okay, now I'm ready. And then it continued. We lived around the corner. We had moved to another house even closer to the firehouse, like half a block away. And he was a weekend dispatcher. So my mother would make lunch and dinner, and my brother and I would drop the dinner plate over there and play on the fire trucks while he ate, and then we would bring the clean plate home. So that was, okay, we'd hang out at the firehouse a lot, So that was, like I say, it was okay, just part of growing up. They did a lot of family stuff. We're always either in the firehouse for a party, or at somebody's backyard for a party or something like that. So it was, like I say, a great life, got me interested very early. Unfortunately, well, when I turned 18, naturally, I joined myself. But then I was away in college for the entry exam. I knew I wanted to be a New York City firefighter by that point. In 1969, while I was still in high school, one of the guys in Inwood, we had a bunch of New York City firefighters who were also volunteers out in Inwood. And one of them took me to work with them. And I spent my first night in the Brooklyn Firehouse. And that was another eye-opening, career-forming event. So, man, how great is this? And they get paid to do this? Man, it's astounding. How do I get this job?
Yeah.
But I was out in college in 1972 when the filing opened and then closed for the FDNY entrance exam. And nobody ever told me that the exam was open. So I missed the 73 test, which God knows, how that could have turned out anyway. But so I didn't get hired until 1979. I had to take the December of 77 test. And then I finally realized what I really wanted to do,
That's amazing when you're a volunteer. I remember we ended up moving into an apartment right across the street from the fire station. So I would always be right there. And I remember there was one day we were actually watching a parade in downtown, and I'm there. My son's probably a year old. I'm there with my wife, and the pager starts going off, and I have Riley in my arms, and I'm handing him to my wife going, take it. And she goes, did you just call our son? And I'm like, oh, whatever you want, just take it. And I got to go to a call. But actually, what did your mom think about Butch taking you on a fire when you were that old?
Well, she didn't know anything about it. I'm sure she wasn't happy about it, but he was babysitting because she was gone. So, okay, when she came back, it's like they're both gone. But now she knows that something big is going on because the whole town's on fire, it seems. So she knew he wasn't going to miss that.
Well, that kind of embedded, obviously you talk about love of the job in the book, that kind of instilled that. And then once you get to New York, now it's just like, now I can profess my love for the job and do the job.
Yeah. I mean, getting hired was like I say, a transformational experience. I mean, I had to work as a fire protection engineer for about 7 years before I got hired in the FDNY. When I got out of college, before I got hired, and that was a great job, but going to the firehouse, and now, I mean, somebody I heard describe it once. What's it like being a firefighter? He says it's like having a sleepover every night with five of your best friends. So that was, you get so close with these guys that they are your best friends. So I love every second of it.
So eventually you get pulled in by Steve into Rescue 3, right? And, so you're working on just a ton of jobs, and they made the change that you guys were going to all the working fires in the area, right? So you're just catching a lot of jobs.
We used to go to every work on fire, but they didn't dispatch us until later into the incident. Depending on where it was at that point, Rescue 3 covered Harlem and all of the Bronx. So we didn't go until the all hands was transmitted, which means that all the first alarm units are already committed. So then they would assign the rescue company. But that may be 5 to 7 or maybe even 10 minutes after the initial working fire signal. So the department had just changed the dispatcher policy just about the time I got there, which was just after Labor Day in '83. So they said, okay, start the rescues out on the 1075 signal, the original working fire signal, which gave us, again, a 5 to 7 minute head start. on a lot of things. So that was a very, very, very useful decision. And in Brooklyn, the dispatchers there had been starting the rescue company out based on telephone calls. If it seemed like it was going to be a working fire, they didn't even wait for the first arriving unit to get there and give a working fire signal. They would start the rescue company out there. So eventually that caught on citywide. It became department dispatch policy. Okay, if you have an indication of people trapped or a working fire in a structure, go ahead and start the full assignment, which we send 3 engines, 2 ladders, the rescue company, the squad company, 2 battalion chiefs for a working fire, and the deputy chief. So start them out early, and you can always turn them around if you don't need them. But, the old saying that it's better to have them than to wish you had them is so often true.
Yeah. So now you guys are getting embedded a lot sooner and going to a lot more fires earlier in. And,
yeah. It probably didn't change the number of fires, but it did change the number of fires we got to operate at. If you're getting there 8 minutes, 10 minutes into this thing, the first engine's got water on it already. Okay, the primary search is probably well underway, so now they don't need you. But if you get there while things are still, not under control yet, okay, now there's a lot more to be done, so you got an opportunity to do a lot more.
So what's one of your, as a firefighter first coming over to Rescue 3, what's one of your most memorable calls or experiences there coming into Rescue 3?
Oh, man. Rescue 3 at the time, like I say, it was housed in Brooklyn, housed in Upper Manhattan, Washington Heights section of Manhattan. And it covered down into Harlem and down to about 110th Street at the time. And then all of the Bronx. So there was a tremendous amount of fire duty going on. Big H-type apartment houses. There was, as far as most memorable experience, time I almost got run over by a train. That was a train fire. I still remember I was sitting in a house watch. I was a house watchman, and I hear the Bronx radio traffic talking about a train fire. And out we go. And sure enough, they thought it was an occupied commuter train right in the tunnel right by Yankee Stadium. And you can't imagine a worse place to have a train full of occupied, commuters with a working fire than being in a tunnel. It turned out it was a spare train waiting for the morning rush hour. So it was just laid up on the tracks there, but we didn't know that initially. And when I went to step, they had told us that the third rail power was off. So, okay, that should mean there's no more trains coming. The problem at that particular juncture was that same track was used by 3 different railroads with 3 different power sources. There was the third rail for one line. There was an overhead catenary line for Amtrak. And then there were diesel locomotives for one of the freight lines. So unbeknownst to us, train traffic was not stopped. And I was just about to step down I went through the burning car, the adjoining car, went up, climbed up into the car, and was about to go down to the outside of that train when I don't know what stopped me. I really, to this day, I can't, nothing. I should have been on that front bumper of that next train that was coming through. He's doing 70 miles an hour trying to get out of that tunnel. And something I felt like a hand on my shoulder just pulled me back. So otherwise, I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think a lot of the book, you kind of like get into planes, trains, automobiles. There's a lot of fun stuff you get into. I'm surprised you ever get on planes to go teach anymore after like reading all the plane stuff.
Yeah, I've been to about 8 major plane crashes. And actually, after my first plane crash in 75, I did not get on a plane for like 8 years. And then finally, the FDNY band was going to Ireland for St. Patrick's Day gig. And you can't take a train or drive to Ireland. So,
Right.
all right, you got to trust somebody. They were going on a 747 and they were flying Aer Lingus, which is like one of the safest airlines in the world. And I looked at the odds and all right, we'll try it. But yeah, after that first plane crash and seeing what it does to human bodies, I'm like, I don't like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd never been on a commercial flight until I got offered to teach at FDIC for the first time. And I was actually going out there to give a class on my sawtooth entrapment where I got burnt, like trapped in a garage in a wildland fire. But it has a lot of crew resource management spin and aircraft stuff from CRM. And so my buddy's like, so let me get this straight. You're going out to FDIC. You've never been on a plane and you're going out to teach about plane crashes. And I was like, yeah, I've seen La Bamba, asshole. I totally get what you're talking about. And now I'm on a plane to FDIC. And but yeah, sometimes you got those opportunities. You just gotta, it's definitely worth the risk.
Yeah, worth the risk. Exactly. Got to take a chance every now and then.
Yeah, you gotta live. You gotta live.
Yeah, we go into burning buildings, don't we?
Right. That definitely can't be as safe as vacants as in chapter 2, like vacant buildings, all that stuff. It definitely seems like you're risking everything for nothing sometimes.
Well, thankfully, we've learned from that experience. I said, at least in the New York City Fire Department for the most part. Although even then, that was what you talk about in chapter 2 there, that was August of 1980. And we had a couple of catastrophes that killed the battalion chief, killed the lieutenant, crippled a bunch of guys. And the job said, this is stupid, both in vacant buildings, piece of shit, things that basically were piles of rubbish that hadn't fallen down yet. And why are we doing this? Why are we going into vacant buildings? Stop. And they got, very involved. We developed that whole vacant building marking system that tells you, what kind of hazards you can expect and whether you should enter or not enter at all. And, we were very careful about doing anything in a vacant building for that point. We hadn't lost a firefighter in a vacant building now in years. Then we had a guy killed, John Clancy, in a vacant building, but they were telling him there were people trapped. And he just took 1 foot, stepped inside the building to look and just see what it was like. And he went down into the cellar where the fire was. But even then, since then, like I say, we've gone a long, long time without getting anybody killed in a vacant building. But now my son, who's a lieutenant, tells me that guys are starting to get back into doing stupid stuff again. Their fires are way down in New York, nothing like what they used to be. And now guys are, I want to get a little piece of this. Let me get a little fire experience here. And, doing stuff that, we said we learned from this, almost 50 years ago. Stop, don't do that. But that's the boss's job. Boss has to set a, firm tone that we're not doing that. I don't care how much you want to play. This is not Disneyland, and you don't get to go in there and, do stuff just because you want to. So.
Yeah. Well, those rides turn into e-ticket rides real quick, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So one of the things you talked about, like in the call in the veterinarians, there was a thing that you led onto about somebody falling into a shark tank, and then you also had a shark experience on one of the plane things. So you're not scared of planes anymore. How about sharks?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of sharks. I mean, I scuba dive. I haven't dove recently, but I was a diver, and I've been in the water with sharks, and for the most part, they're not going to attack you unless they mistake you for something else, like a seal. But the guy in the shark tank in the Coney Island Aquarium, that was like, oh, are we going to put a, diver into that tank to retrieve, a body? Because, I mean, if the shark has had him that's a 20-minute ride for us. If the shark's had him for 20 minutes, unless he's climbed out on his own or somebody's pulled him out, before we got there, I don't know that I want to put a diver into the tank. Turns out it was a false alarm anyway, thank God. But yeah, sharks are not one. There's a few things like sharks and snakes that I'm not real fond of.
Right.
I respect them; they respect me. In most parts, we've come to a standing agreement. Okay, don't mess with me, and I won't mess with you.
So as you go along, you have all these crazy calls in the rescue, and then you promote to lieutenant. How did that come into your leadership ability working as an officer?
Well, that was a big challenge. I had gotten promoted relatively young. With relatively small time on the job. I had 8 years on the fire department, and now I'm going to rescue company. Well, not right away. I mean, I covered for about 2 years, and 8 years on the job, and still I had, drivers and a lot of people on the back step with 20 years on the job. And now I'm telling them what to do. And you had to really, learn what you know and what you don't know, and understand that, hey, yeah, pinning a bar on your shoulder doesn't make you, a great officer. I mean, it makes you accept responsibility, but it doesn't make you know anything more than you did when you were still a fireman. And a lot of these guys have been firemen for, 20 years, and they know a lot too. So it was, I think, helpful to me that I did get promoted relatively early. I had 9 years in other fire departments before I got hired. So I had a total of like 17 years, going to fires. But when you go to a place like Ladder 111, I was sent to Ladder 111 in Bed-Stuy as a covering lieutenant. And my chauffeur there was a guy named Charlie Williams. Charlie Williams was one hell of a fireman. And my first night when I get there, I wasn't permanent there yet. It was just an overtime tour. And Charlie goes, hey, Lou, where'd you work? Which is the standard question for everybody. They want to know, who is this nitwit walking in the door with a bar on his collar, and what does he know? And I just told him, very low key, I'm not looking to, brag or anything like that. I just got promoted out of Upper Manhattan. Now, Upper Manhattan's a very big area. It has slow companies and it has very busy companies in Harlem. But let Charlie figure that out later on. And Charlie's, okay, well, listen, we're doing a lot of work here, boss. So we know our job. You just kind of stay out of the way and we'll take care of business. And I'm only there for the night. I mean, I'm not looking to, I don't expect to be back there anytime soon. So, okay, Charlie. So what I knew that you have to basically prove yourself. You can't tell people, who you are, how good you are. You have to prove to them by your actions. So I'm just waiting for an opportunity. I'm waiting for a fire, really, and Charlie was, yeah, we're doing a lot of fires, we're doing 4 or 5 fires a night, which they were, because the Muslims in the neighborhood were burning out the crack dealers. The Muslims do not like drug dealers, and they were just firebombing them. Okay, so they were doing a lot of that. And now that night, we don't have a working fire. And there goes my opportunity. I don't get to prove myself to Charlie. I'm like, oh man, I really wanted to, see if I could basically keep up with these guys, because they are another legendary company within the FDNY. There's 15 to 20 companies that as soon as you mention, that you work in those companies, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. And 111 was one of them. But I didn't get an opportunity that night. About 6 months later, I did get assigned there. I was there covering for a year. So I did get an opportunity, and Charlie and I got to be good friends. But that first night, it was like, oh, man, come on, let something go on. Let something happen here. Nothing.
Yeah. Well, and I think last time when I saw you at FDIC, we were talking about like the book that I'm working on is Strategy and Tactics for Employee Fires and dealing with fires in the firehouse. I'm sure you probably, I mean, those types of companies have some major circus acts that go on in the firehouse. We got to manage.
Circus act is absolutely a great description for it, man. That was a tough place for, on bosses. They had a lot of very strong senior firefighters that, they were set in their ways, and you got to be very tough to put up with it. My first day when I got sent there 6 months later, UFO, I'm in the truck office, and the engine office connects with it, and the captain comes in, and he's a senior captain, Joe Ebert. And he, same thing, same question, where'd you work, kid? So when it's, officer to officer, you open up a lot more. So I tell him I was a fireman in 290, out of 103. Joe was a fireman in 290 and 103. Was a fireman up in Rescue 3, Okay, you got the 3 P's. And that was a great learning point. You got the 3 P's, you'll be fine. What are the 3 P's? He says, pedigree, where you worked, profile, are you a shrinking violet, or are you a guy that's, you got your chin out and you're gonna, look for things to do, and performance. The performance is going to have to wait. They're going to have to see you perform. But the first 2 are going to buy you the time and the opportunity for them to give you that opportunity to perform. Like I say, okay, you didn't, we have fire companies in New York City that do 75 to 80 runs a year. If you had gotten promoted from one of those companies, these guys would eat you alive. But you're coming from companies that have done 6,000 runs a year. You've gone to a lot of fires. You worked in high profile units. I had actually been awarded a department medal for valor. I think about that year. So, okay, you got the pedigree and you got the profile. Now all you got to do is show them with your performance, and you're going to be fine. But you still have to keep that in mind that, just like if you're a new ensign graduating from Annapolis, you don't know diddly squat about life in the fleet. You don't know what the real world is like. So your best thing you can do is go talk to an old, senior bosun's mate and get him and bounce your ideas off of them before you do anything with them, So that was one of my things that I adopted very strongly. Okay, before we did anything, unless it was, a life and death decision making that has to be done right now. Okay, what do you guys think? What do you want to do with this? Especially like in most of the what we call emergency stuff. It's not life threatening split-second decision making. There's time for a little bit of conferencing. Okay, here's what I think. What do you guys think? And that always served me very well throughout every stage of my career. Talk to the people that are going to be doing the job. Talk to particularly the senior people. I've gotten, some great tips from guys who had seen that and done that before already. And this is my first time seeing it. Okay, let's do it that way.
Yeah, and that usually goes back to that leadership continuum, or am I working with brand new firefighters? But you were always working with solid companies that had been around for a long time. So it's more of a democratic process than an autocratic in a lot of those.
Yeah, it has to be. Absolutely. You go walking in there with the bar on your shoulder and say, hey, I'm, doing this. Okay, Cap, or Lieutenant, we'll go ahead, we'll let you sink and we'll watch.
Right.
So,
Right.
or we can help you swim along. you know. That's good human behavior, no matter what.
Yeah. What's some of the firehouse antics you've had to manage as an officer in some of those companies?
Oh man. As an officer, as a participant, that's the problem with being a firefighter in a smaller organization. Everybody knows you and they've known what you pulled. The beauty about being in a large organization is you get promoted and they move you to the other side of the city where nobody knows what you've done before.
Yeah, they can't use it against you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
As an officer, we had a few challenges. I had an incident one time. We had just finished dinner, and this is probably the most challenging, and the way I handled it, probably you couldn't do today, or you probably wouldn't want to do today. We had just finished dinner, and one of the senior men, and I'll leave all the names out, senior man says, "Oh, it's almost Easter, I believe." And he says, "Oh, I just got my nieces and nephews turtles for Easter." One of the other guys says, "Turtles? What's the matter with you? You trying to give them salmonella?" And the next thing I know, the senior guy has this relatively junior guy in a headlock and is trying to punch the hell out of him. And he's trying to twist his head off. I'm like, "Stop! You can't do this! Stop!" And my yelling does nothing. And oh my God. And the senior guy is a very big guy. The only way I can physically break this up is if I come up behind him with a Halligan tool or something and smack him in the back of the head, because there's no way that I can physically take this guy on. So I, "Stop! Put him down!" And he looks at me and he doesn't stop. Finally, "Stop! That's an order!" And he stops and he looks at me. He says, "You're making that an order?" He says, "Yes, put him down." And he does. He drops him. Okay, that's a start. Now what? We are working in a very busy company and it's 9 o'clock at night and we've got 12 hours left in the shift. What do I do with this guy? With these two guys? Because we're going to go to a fire tonight, maybe multiple fires. And do I have to worry about one of them throwing the other off a roof or something? So now, I mean, what do you do as the officer under those circumstances? Well, my advice to anybody today is immediately get on the phone and call the next level of command. Report this up the chain, which I did not do. The first thing I did was I separated them and then asked to hear both sides of their story. What was this about? This was not about turtles. This was a long-standing, long-simmering disagreement that I did not pick up on. So part of it was probably my fault. It seems the younger fellow wasn't pulling his share around the firehouse. It was, if people are doing committee work, he did a lot of standing around leaning on a broom as opposed to pitching in and, doing actual dirty work, which would have been expected of a relatively new guy in the company. And the perception was, because he and I had worked together in a previous company as firefighters, the perception was that he was getting away with it because he was the lieutenant's buddy, which was not the case. I just wasn't aware of it. I wasn't down there watching him sweep the floors. So when the fellow made this comment, that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. So when I heard both sides of that out, I said, okay, what are we going to do here? Do we have to get the chief involved? I mean, can I trust you guys to go to a fire in 2 minutes from now and not kill each other? And they both looked me in the eye and both said, "No, we're good. We can do this. It's over. We've aired out what has to be aired out. And as long as everybody, understands that's where we're coming from and it's got to be done that way, we're good. And probably foolishly, I left it at that. Nothing came of it. Nothing ever happened. But in today's environment, I could see nothing but lawsuits, criminal complaints filed for assault against somebody, complaints filed against me for failure to supervise, failure to do my job, report it. Today it's an entirely different environment. So that was absolutely the worst that I had to deal with, but fortunately it was over in about 20 minutes and never came back to bite anybody on the rear end, but yeah, that's management challenges, basically, man, there's some tough ones out there.
Well, the hardest part about that is you get to know all of them. And like you said in the book, you get to love them, and you're trying to manage people that you love as an officer, and it's tough.
But that's part of what you have to do. I mean, you are the designated adult. When you put that, bar on your collar, that's your role now. You're the parent. You're not, one of the pranksters. You can't be getting in with the weeds with them. And there are times, I've had to file formal disciplinary charges against people, which I did not like to do. Turned out both of them were for off-duty conduct. They got themselves locked up on felony charges. Well, you're getting department charges no matter what. I just happened to be the guy that was, on duty, so I had to do the paperwork. I've sent people to the drunk tank, because they needed it. And both of them came back to me afterwards and thanked me for trying to save their lives. And both of them died of alcoholism, but at least, I was trying to get them help. And they both appreciated it, So you're the boss.
That's the ultimate goal, is still treating them with respect, and even the bad ones.
I love both of them. I mean, both of them were, great firefighters. Hell, one of them had won the department's highest medal for valor. He was a hero. But now he's drinking, and I'm sorry, I can't have that. I don't know what the past boss did, but I'm the boss now, and we can't do that. And if you continue, we're going to go, the formal route. And he says, I can't stop. I'm an alcoholic. Okay, then we have to get you alcoholic treatment.
Yeah.
It didn't work, but only an alcoholic can cure an alcoholic.
And even for yourself, I mean, as time, right, even your goggle view changed as you became a chief officer, and then you see the other side of all of those things that go down. It makes it even harder, because now you're looking at the risk management and the legal side of it.
Well, again, a lot of that, back in the 70s, well, early 70s, I mean, there was not even a policy against drinking in the firehouse when some of these guys started. So their culture had changed around them, and they had failed to adapt. And the climate is changing around us today, and you have to stay up with what's going on. I actually had formal charges filed against me that I did not know about for a sexual harassment complaint. And I wasn't one of the harassers. My job, when I found out about the harassment, was to deal with it and make it stop. And I went and did that. And the person who was being harassed didn't want me to take the steps that I did to go formal. And I said, I can't let it go on. I can't let this, continue. And it's not your choice now. Once I become aware as a supervisor, I become aware that something illegal is happening, I have to stop it. I have no choice. But she filed a complaint. It was, done away with. It went nowhere because I was in the right. I had to do what I had to do. So yeah, there are all those challenges. It's a whole lot easier to just be the nozzle man in a fire company than it is to be the boss.
Well, I mean, when it all comes down to it, that's where we all start, and that's where we all want to end up. And that's, yeah.
It's not a bad job. I'll say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done a lot of
water. That's easy. I can do that.
I've done a lot of teaching in Illinois, and they have fire departments in Illinois and some other places in the Midwest where they use part-time firefighters, and they'll hire a fellow from a different organization, regardless of rank, to fill vacancies. And it might be you could be a chief in one department and get hired overtime, or hired the equivalent of overtime for a shift in another department. And now you're the nozzle man for the day. And I'm like, what a great role that would be. How do I get that job?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Chief, I appreciate all the stories in the book. I know that I'm sure the members did too. It was definitely worth the read time. And that's what the Firefighter Book Club is all about, just reading and learning and being able to talk to the author is the huge thing about it. You can kind of expand on some of that. So I really appreciate it.
Well, yeah, that was the goal, Jesse. I mean, a lot of it was, when I first wrote it, actually, was probably, I said I started taking notes in the early 90s, but I had taken it to Penwell probably late 90s, and they didn't want to publish it because it didn't have enough lessons in the book. It wasn't an educational book. Which is what they publish primarily. And I said, I went back, and that's one of the things that I tried to include was lessons like on leadership, or tactical lessons like how to lift that 80,000-pound truck of bananas and move it sideways, or some of the other lessons that are in there. And that was a goal. A, yeah, they are entertaining. B, educational, and then C, as a tribute to those people that, the amazing things that some of these guys did that I just happen to be aware of or part of or something like that. So 3 missions. I hope that I accomplished them all.
Yeah. Well, you did for me. And again, it's always good seeing you. Thanks for hanging out. I'm gonna turn it over to the members if they have any questions, and we'll wrap up the official meeting. We'll turn it over to them.
Okay.
For those of you that have not been on the book club before, you can just assume that at this point the cameras are off. If you are okay with whatever you talk about being used in the video later on, by all means, let me know. But if you got something that you want to bring up, ask questions, and you don't want it out in the video that comes out later, now's the time. But turn it over to you guys if you got anything before we go to writer's block after that. Somebody you want to drop?
I'm here. Come on, boys.
I know David had something.
Well, I was trying to give everybody the chance to speak up before I come, with, my laundry list of questions.
He's got a list.
Somebody's got to be first, Dave. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Well, first off, Chief Norman, thank you so much for writing the book, as well as, being here today. I will tell you that last week when I finished it, to be honest with you, I got a little bit mad at you because I'm like, okay, where's more? I need more. and I don't say that lightly because I'm a very technical reader, but I literally couldn't put your book down, and I thank you for that. So one of the things that so I'm in North Carolina. My department is between Raleigh and Fayetteville. And one of the things that I've always, I won't say have problems with, but it's always a struggle. And I think that you probably can say a lot about this is from your time in the rescues. I love the idea of the man versus machine rescue, kind of situation. That there's, the place where there's no easy solution. It's not like take this little bolt out and then, hey, everything's great. My department is also responsible for the entire county for technical rescue. And so my question is with that, other than just the standard training and just looking and learning, do you have any advice on how to just constantly try to be that one step better, that one step more prepared for those kind of man versus machine rescues?
Yeah, go to the manufacturers. You know, if you have either the original equipment manufacturer or the maintenance crew that does it, go there and establish that rapport with them. And when they get a piece of equipment in that they're going to be working on, ask them if they'll let you watch, or, you know, maybe even, you know, play with it a little bit. You'd be amazed at, you know, what you can do and what's out there. You know, it's like cars at junkyards. Well, how do you get good at auto extrication? You don't do it on the street. You got to go to the junkyard and cut them up over and over and over again. So go to those same places, the businesses that repair all this stuff, and talk to them, find out what's going on.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Come on, what's next on the list?
I was going to say, are we continue down your list, Dave? Go ahead.
Well, I mean, again, I'm not trying to monopolize Chief's time. You mentioned it earlier, Chief, the word mentor, and I wrote an article for a regional emergency services publication on this topic. But I think we use the word mentor way too frequently and not the way it is really meant to be. So would you tell us a little bit about how you define what a mentor is and what their role is? Well,
anybody can be a mentor, both good and bad. I mean, somebody that is a, you know, pro mentor picks you up, takes you under their wing, and decides to teach you and make it a point of educating you and motivating you. And I was blessed to have several of them in my life and career. And those were irreplaceable. I mean, they make the person so much better. In our city, back in 98, 99, the city actually created a mentorship program with captains who were about to be promoted to battalion chief. Before you actually got promoted, they assigned you to a senior chief, and you would spend every tour riding and working with that chief officer. And his job for 3 months was to teach you the way to do things out in the real world. And that was very helpful. I had been lucky enough to be Bob Schildhorn, have him as my mentor. And he was another great guy who just wanted to show you the best way that it can be done. And I say that was a great program. They've since cut it way down because we expanded our battalion chiefs training course. At that time, the chief's training course was only 2 weeks. Now it's up to 6 weeks. So they cut down the mentorship program. They still do it. And it's only for 2 weeks now, but it's still a valuable tool. So yeah, having somebody show you the way it's done for real. And like I say, with that positive attitude that we're here to make you the best you can be.
Absolutely. And you and I are definitely looking at it the same way, that there's more of a person, a mentor, somebody who has an investment in the person that they are working with. And it's not I've had several times where people, you know, I may have spent 30 minutes doing a training with them or something and see them once a year. And they're like, well, he's my mentor. And I said, well, no, I'm not your mentor. That's something else. I may be teaching you. I may be somebody you can learn from, but I'm not your mentor.
Right. Because you don't have any real direct impact on them all the time. Continue. Yeah. You might be, you know, somebody that they look up to, but yeah. You're right.
All right, well, I guess, Jess, do you want me to go again to my next question?
Unless somebody else is stepping up.
Yeah, we'll let Dave. How many do you have, Dave? I mean, I'm okay.
I mean, I've got like 6 or 7 more.
Okay.
I'm one of those. I mean, especially with this book, there's so many times. I mean, it took me all month to read it, but it was because I would read a chapter, and it would be so good that I would just like, okay, wait a minute. I remember everything in this chapter, but I've got to read it again just because I feel like there's something missing because it was so important. It was so interesting.
And John, I'll tell you that I got that a couple of times from some of the members, Facebook comments and stuff like that. Like, I just couldn't put this book down. I kept moving along, and it was definitely good stuff from the membership, John.
Glad to hear it.
All right, give us another one, Dave.
Okay, I got another one. So my department is technically a combination department. We have a full-time person that works 24 hours a day, supplemented by generally 2 part-time employees, and we have about 50 volunteers. One of our benefits in the volunteer side is we have a university in our first due, and so we regularly have a good picking of younger generation that's just constantly coming in for 4 years. You kind of mentioned a little bit towards the end of y'all's discussion, but one of the things I see having problems with more and more as time goes by, I mean, I've been on the job almost 24 years, is getting these newer recruits to understand the serious nature of what we do and understand, because, I get excuses such as, well, this is just little of whatever department and such. We generally run about 30 to 60 jobs a year, which is decent for where we're from, and such. But, I personally try to use it as just a senior man. I try to use the fact that every time we go on a call, if I'm riding the seat, we're going to do it just like this. I don't care if it's alarm bells. You know what? We should park where we're going to park. We should sit there and pull hose like we're going to pull, and just like it was the regular thing. So I was wondering if you had any other tips or tricks on how to get them to understand, yes, it may be alarm bells, or, this may not be this big FDNY, but you know what? It takes one call.
Absolutely, Dave. You cannot let your guard down. I mean, you're doing it the right way. I have a video. I don't own the rights to it. It was a neighboring department on a mutual aid call, and I use it all the time. And comes in on a Friday night, about 10 o'clock at night, as an automatic alarm in a private house. And it's a department that does a lot of automatic alarms and does not do a lot of work in fires. So what is their assumption? Just another, BS automatic alarm. They leave with 4 people on the rig, an officer, a driver, 1 real firefighter, and 1 brand new firefighter who's not even mask qualified, not even interior certified. So now, what are they anticipating, right? I mean, it's all about doing it the right way. And they pull up and they find a working fire. Not only did they find a working fire, but now it's a working fire with 4 people trapped in the house, one of which is hanging out a window. And what do you do with your 2-person interior team at this point? How do you use your resources when it's the real deal and the importance? They were very fortunate. They had just begun, they had just implemented automatic aid in that area. And that played a huge role because it got a lot of resources there early in the incident that wouldn't have been there in time to make a difference. And they save all 4 of these people's lives, an 11-month-old baby, and I think a 4-year-old girl and the parents. But that same scenario that you described applies over and over and over again, and it's complacency. And complacency is a killer. But the other thing I talk about all the time is our history. Look at the firefighter death reports. You can get them on the U.S. Fire Administration's website. And, you go to places like Keokuk, Iowa, where they lost those firefighters in a training burn. Gloucester, New Jersey, not major, cities. They get people killed just like everybody else, and it can happen today. If you have a building that resembles any of those buildings, guess what? That same building could kill your people today. If you had firefighters killed 100 years ago, but you still have 100-year-old buildings that are the same problem, those can kill you today. So yeah, you're in the right mode there. You got to keep on them, and you don't ever give up that, okay, yeah, this is all nonsense. The day anybody says, well, that's not going to happen to us, is, that's a tragedy. Actually, my wife had I was really impressed with her. For years, I used to teach at Firehouse Expo in Baltimore. And my kids all grew up, and they grew up in Baltimore at the expo there. Every year we'd go to that. And they became firefighters in the local volunteer fire department where we live now. And we're out for our walk one day, my wife and I, and we meet the chief of the local volunteer fire department here, who says, "Hey, John, how you doing? You going to Baltimore again this year?" I says, "Yeah, I go every year." And he says something like, "I'm not going. It's always the same stuff. You never learn anything new there." And my wife lit into him like, "What? What is the matter with you? You think you know everything? You can't learn anything by going to a place like Baltimore where there's so much great. He doesn't know everything. For 35 years, he's going to fires. He doesn't know everything. You better get, I don't want you leading my son into burning buildings if you think you have that attitude." Man, oh man, okay. But she's absolutely right. The day you think you know everything, is the day you're setting yourself up for failure.
Absolutely. I mean, I always say that, the day that I stop learning is the day I want to die, because that's when there's problems. And,
Good move.
And I'm looked down upon sometimes because of it. I mean, we had a fire alarm, a few days ago, and I had the wonderful opportunity of riding backwards for a change. And, the two other people that's riding in the back with me, they're just like, well, I guess I'll put my turnout gear on. And, and here I am, 42 years old, big dude sitting in this back of this, engine. And I'm sitting there getting, by the time we get there, I've got, full air pack on, mask, everything. Yeah. And I'm just like, "What are y'all doing?" They're like, "Well, it's a fire alarm." And I'm like, "Yeah, but if we get up there and that thing's going off, guess what I'm ready for?"
Absolutely. I was talking to Jesse earlier. I talked about, one of my mentors and how you never wanted to disappoint. Mm-hmm. All you saw was a look of disappointment. All he had to do was give you a little shake of the head, with his eyes down and closed. You knew you disappointed him. And that was one of the things that he absolutely made a point of. Don't get off the rig unless you're ready to go to work. Every time, I don't care what it is, automatic alarm, gas leak, stuck elevator, you get off ready to go to work,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Jesse, do you want me to continue, or, I feel like I'm just kind of taking over the show or something now, and I apologize for that.
Well, is anybody else looking to get in?
I told you to be the co-host today, Dave. You said you had a lot of questions, for John. So I said you can come on a co-host.
Well, I guess if I've not heard anybody else, I guess I'll go to the next one.
I don't have Mike Richardson on here to jam you up instead. So
well, I was looking through the list to go like, to be sure, there's somebody out there that wants to talk other than me. But
if you guys want to raise your hand in the chat, or if you guys got questions, raise it up in the chat. Let me know, and I'll disrupt Dave if that's the case. Otherwise, keep going, Dave.
And I'm sure, Jesse, that would make you proud and happy just to go ahead.
Nope, you're good. Go ahead.
Awesome. So one of the things that looking at from very far on the outside was, and you mentioned in the book, and I think it's towards the end of chapter 1, when you know, mentioning a little bit about 9/11 and stuff, and you know that was a learning experience, because it was the first time that a lot of people had the idea that, you know what, we can't win every fire. There's just stuff we can't do. And so I was wondering, because that was without a doubt such an impactful situation that I can't even imagine for you all, how did that change the culture and environment of FDNY, going from, you know, what I saw again on the outside is like, you know, we can handle everything, to this realization, well, maybe we just can't do that. And sometimes we're just going to have to go with the flow.
Yeah, absolutely. It actually kind of helped to cement in an approach that we had been working toward for years anyway. Like I said, when I started in '79, I mean, we were losing guys in vacant buildings, and you know, that was absolutely, you know, stupid. And the job recognized it, and they took a lot of leadership to get that culture shaken out of us. And listen, look at the price we're paying. This is absolutely stupid. Masks, wearing SCBA every time you go inside a burning building. When I first started, you know, we didn't. There were guys, when I first started, the company policy in 290 engine was the nozzle man and the backup man will start the nozzle, start the first hose line in without masks, and they will be relieved by the third and fourth guys if they need relief. Stupid. It came from the days when the masks were in a plywood box in a compartment on the side of the rig. And when the rig pulled up, okay, it would take you a minute to a minute and a half to get that mask out of the box, perform all the tests, put it on, and be ready to go to work. So they didn't want to lose that minute and a half. So they started the hose line without the mask, and the other guys would put the masks on. But now by 1979, when I got there, the masks were in a bracket, either in your seat back or up right next to you in the jump seat. That took leadership to make a change. Okay, stop. If I see you in a burning building without a mask on, you're getting charges. After 9/11, you know, we did a lot of soul searching that, hey, we lost a lot of people, some of whom, you know, did not have to die. They were off duty and rode anyway. You know, we just said, guys, don't do it. Don't do it. You know, when we call for third alarm assignment, we know how many firefighters we're getting. If we wanted another 20 firefighters, we'd have simply made it a fourth alarm. You know, we didn't want the off-duty guys at that point. You know, after that, you know, we did a lot of terrorism training, terrorism preparedness, and war gaming. And we said, you know, listen, this could happen again, you know, and there are lots of other scenarios where we could have either a fire, you know, maybe an arson set fire, or somebody drives a gasoline tank truck into the bottom of a high rise. You know, what are we going to do about it? You know, and again, it came down to risk versus reward, like everything else that we do. If it was the Empire State Building, yeah, we'd go in and fight that fire, because the Empire State Building was an old heavyweight building that's not going to fall down. Even if you drive a gasoline tank truck in there, you know, we'll have a hell of a fire, but we'll be able to save people on the upper floors and not worry about collapse. If it's some of the other buildings in the city that are lightweight, well, you know what? We may not be able to go in and fight that fire, because that building is going to fall down before we can make a difference. So that kind of decision making, it's a real part of what we have to do. And the FDNY has taken a very, you know, strong approach to making those hard decisions. And some of it might mean we're not going to be able to get to everybody, and we know that.
Mm-hmm.
So don't add to the firefighter death toll needlessly.
Well, that I've always said and taught. I've been an officer in my company before, and like I said, I'm just a senior man, but I still take time to try to train on everything. And that's the mentality I always tell them is if you're going to die, make sure that there was some reason to die. That there's that it was like, what, there was a 2-year-old up in that room, and I'm busting my tail, and I didn't make it or whatever. But you know what, I died because there was a reason to die, not from a house that could be rebuilt next week.
Great. Yeah, great sentiment, Dave. Great sentiment.
Thank you. Jesse, you got anybody else trying to jump in? And
Nope, you're still good. Keep going.
okay. Like I said, I'm just trying not to monopolize the time. Chief Norman, you made a few good points on your last comments here. And I was wondering, a lot of times, erroneously, we think that ICS started after 9/11, which we know is not the case, and such by leaps and bounds. I personally have found research showing, where it was, come from business textbooks in the 20s and 30s and such. But I was wondering if you could talk about how ICS was a tool for you all, in the immediate days, the immediate response to the trade center.
Well, we in New York City had been doing a form of ICS forever. We are a hierarchical organization where battalion chief would be the initial incident commander. A deputy chief would come in after that and would be expected to relieve. The battalion chief would remain at the command post, but the deputy would be making the decisions. And after that, the staff chief, either deputy assistant or an assistant chief, would come in and maybe, on a third or fourth alarm, would assume command as well. We'd always been doing that. During 9/11, initially, our command structure was shattered. The chief of department was killed. 2 of the assistant chiefs were killed. We lost 21 chief officers that day. So when they reconstituted, and a lot of the survivors, like Assistant Chief Nigro, he was the chief of operations. He had been there and was a survivor, but he was, terribly distraught. He inhaled all the toxic, products and everything. He was beat up physically. Chief Carruthers was the same way. So many of them were beat up, and we didn't have a good scope. We didn't have a handle on the scope of the event initially. It was such a large area. You couldn't see, there was so much dust and debris still in the air. It hung in the air for days. Downwind, you couldn't see downwind for days, weeks in some cases afterwards. So to get a good handle on the scope of things, that took probably a week to get a real good handle on. So it was our ICS in those first 2 or 3 days in particular was just ad hoc company officers doing task level stuff, battalion chiefs matching groups of companies together, a deputy chief or an assistant chief taking a sector. And it took us until probably Thursday night. Yeah, actually it was Friday before we had the first reorganizational meeting, when we realized, wait a minute, we got hundreds of guys missing, key players, guys like Ray Downey, who would have been key advisors in some of these roles, and they're gone. We don't know that they're dead yet, but so now we had to start regrouping, and we had a meeting at the 26 Federal Plaza, federal office building, and said, okay, this is the way we're going to do it. He's going to be Chief Carruthers is going to be the incident commander. We're breaking out a 2,000 person task force, and they'll handle the World Trade Center incident. And the other 9,000 guys, you stay on duty and handle the city. And we actually had them on full recall. So we had 9,000 people on duty in the firehouses, double and triple shifts. But we didn't know what to expect next. We expected further attacks. So everybody wanted to be ready for whatever. We were on a wartime footing. Then they started establishing a formal ICS system. Chief Carruthers, like I say, was the incident commander. Pete Hayden was the executive officer. I became the search and rescue branch manager. We had a logistics branch manager, Charlie Blach. That's when we developed that. Part of our problem was we had never conducted such large-scale, long-term incidents. The longest term incident that we'd ever done in New York City that I know of was in '98. We had a scaffold collapse on a high-rise building that had to be dismantled. So we had units on scene for about 5 weeks, but it was done in-house. We relieved on 4-hour rotations. So there was not a lot of logistical support required. We rotate one company out and replace them with another company. So we didn't have that kind of in-depth background like the West Coast guys with their, months-long wildfires had. And when we realized we didn't even realize it at first. We were still struggling through with our existing staff. FEMA came and said, listen, we've got people that can do a lot of what you're trying to do here. We can bring in an incident management team that's what they do. They bring in all the resources to set up, and they handle these wildfires. They'll, create a city out in the middle of nowhere with 5,000 firefighters, and they will provide all the support to it. We said, bring them on. So the first team that came in was, I believe, the New Mexico and Arizona team, or maybe it was Alaska, but one of those were the first teams in there, and they showed us what they could do. And they took over all the planning, the logistical support, and they were absolutely tremendous for us. So
awesome. Well, I've got one kind of, I want to say one because I've still got, the more we have this wonderful opportunity, again, thank you so much. My list is getting longer and longer and longer and stuff, but, just because I always like to stir the pot a little bit, my two-part final question is what's your favorite borough and what's your favorite firehouse with the FDNY?
Oh, man. I enjoyed every single assignment. They were all challenging. They were all different. I look back at it today. My favorite place has to be Rescue 2 in Brooklyn. It's such a big borough. At the time I was there in particular, we were doing so much fire duty. It was also at a time when we would, not converting, we'd always done technical rescue, but we were professionalizing it more. We had Ray Downey was the company commander. We were organizing the USAR task force. We were actually teaching in the USAR program on the federal level. And it was, that was just a great time and a great place. So can never go home again, though. That's what I've learned. It's never going to be the same.
I fully understand. Yes, sir. Well, again, I'm going to step aside, and because, like I said, I could do this all day, and I just thank you. I'm just trying to absorb as much as I can, and thank you for your leadership and your caringness to share everything and making this 10-time better job for being part of it. So thank you for your time.
Dave, that's Steve Cassani right there. That was his impact on me, because he, like I said, took me under his wing and said, listen, kid, I'm going to teach you this, but I'm going to be really disappointed if you don't pass it on to the next guy. So that was something that I took very seriously, that charge from Steve and from so many others. And that's what somebody else taught me everything I know. I'm just trying to pass it on to the next guys.
Well, if I may say so, sir, I'm sure that they are very, very proud of you. And thank you for sharing it.
Thank you, Dave. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you, sir. Thank you, Jesse, and sorry to monopolize your show here.
No, well, I mean, that's what it's all about. Like I said, the original intent was supposed to be more of that free-flowing book club, and it just never turned out that way. But it's starting to get that way. We're almost at 1,000 members now, so I'm assuming the groups and the live sessions will get bigger as we go along. So it'll be good stuff.
Well, I'll try to start keeping it to a minimum maximum kind of thing for you, sir.
Dave, if somebody didn't ask those questions, shame on them. They're probably just too embarrassed to ask them. So you are doing everybody else a favor.
Well, thank you, Chief. I'm all about learning, and you don't learn by being quiet and sitting in a corner and everything like that. So some people call it loudmouth, some people call it learning, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I'd call it learning. You're right.
Dave, you could be quiet if you tried.
Look, my wife tells everybody when I first meet them that I'm so bad about talking that I could actually make dead people come back to life because they get up and like, this is bull crap. I'm done with hearing you talk.
So Dave, you said that your book is not signed by Chief Norman, correct?
Correct, sir.
Okay, I'm going to send John your address, and I'm going to have John send you a signed copy of his book. I got your address. I'm gonna make that happen. I'll take care of the cost for it, and you'll have John sign you a copy. All right.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that very much, both of you.
Yeah, I'm sure John won't mind dropping one in the mail. He probably does it constantly.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Before we transition over to writer's block, which Dave is also a part of here, so he's writing a book too. But anybody else got anything else before we transition to writer's block? We'll keep John on a little bit. He's going to just kind of talk about some writing stuff, and then we'll transition. So anybody else got anything else? Looks like in the chat there was just kind of like thanks for being here and stuff like that. So pop on now or forever hold your peace, and we'll move on. Okay, so for those of you that don't want to be in writer's block and don't want to write a book, you're smart first and foremost, but we're going to close out the meeting and move into that. So